Iran's strategic pact with Russia? Total nonsense. Those aren't my words, they're from Mohammad Sadr, Iran's top foreign policy advisor, who just launched a scathing attack on Moscow. In a recent interview, check this out, we should never trust them. In the recent war, and even the one before, when Israel struck all our air defense sites, questions arose. How did Israel know their locations so precisely? My take? The Russians fed that intel to the Israelis. Sadr didn't hold back. He shredded the Iran-Russia alliance, calling it a sham, a betrayal, and accusing Putin of stabbing Iran in the back. What's wild is this comes just months after Tehran inked a 20-year strategic deal with Moscow. But since then, Iran's been hit hard, isolated, and left hanging. Russia? Nowhere to be seen. According to Sadr, Iran might have signed a deal with the devil, and a useless one at that. Iran now views Moscow as a treacherous opportunist. Let's break down how a 20-year pact turned into a diplomatic train wreck and how its collapse is shaking up alliances across the region. To get why Sadr's words hit so hard, we need to rewind to the events that set this off. Back in January, Iran and Russia signed a massive deal in Moscow, a 20-year agreement meant to bind them on trade, energy, and military cooperation. Both nations were under heavy sanctions, with the US and Europe strangling their economies. The deal seemed like a lifeline for two countries pushed to the margins, a way to stand tall together. Leaders shook hands, gave speeches about unity, and pitched it as a bold move to outsmart their foes. For a moment, it looked like they had a real shot at making it work. Iran went in with big hopes. They wanted advanced weapons to counter Israel, their biggest threat. They had their sights on Russian fighter jets to dominate the skies and defense systems to neutralize threats from afar. Iran also expected Russia to have their back if things heated up, not necessarily fighting, but at least offering support. The deal built on years of smaller agreements, with Russia supplying Iran older systems. But as months passed, those hopes faded. Russia kept stalling on equipment deliveries, citing factory issues or concerns about upsetting other nations. Iran waited, hoping patience would pay off, but the gap between expectations and reality grew wider. Then came June, when it all fell apart. News alert, Israel's launching preemptive airstrikes on Iran. Explosions reported in Tehran, the capital. Israel hit a state-run TV station in a surprise attack. You can see the devastating impact of this Iranian ballistic missile strike, a residential block, not a military target, completely destroyed. On June 13, Israel unleashed Operation Rising Lion, a wave of coordinated airstrikes that rocked Iran's military to its core. It wasn't just fast, it was surgical. Over 12 days, Israeli jets, drones, and covert assets tore through Iran's defenses with brutal precision. The targets? Iran's military backbone, nuclear sites, missile silos, radar stations, IRGC command centers, and air defense batteries. Over 900 locations were hit, with hundreds of missile launchers destroyed, cutting Iran's retaliatory power by nearly half. The illusion of readiness collapsed overnight. In Tehran, leadership scrambled. Communications broke down, command chains fractured, and the air defense grid, once hyped as ironclad, crumbled. This was supposed to be Iran's moment to flex its strength. Instead, it exposed glaring weaknesses. The strikes weren't just powerful, they were too precise, as if Israel had a blueprint of Iran's entire defense network, down to the last radar. To make matters worse, Israel wasn't alone. Within hours, the US backed the operation, calling it self-defense, with American satellites, intel, and refueling aircraft quietly supporting from the sidelines. Britain, France, and Germany followed, offering logistical help. The West rallied behind Israel, sending a clear message: this wasn't just Israel's fight, it was a coalition-backed power play. Meanwhile, Russia, Iran's so-called strategic partner, stayed silent. No condemnation, no support, no action. Moscow's media downplayed the strikes, and Kremlin officials dodged questions. For Tehran, the silence was deafening. To understand why this stung so much, look at what Iran brought to the table. this wasn't just a handshake. Iran supplied thousands of drones to Russia, like the Shahid 136, fueling Moscow's war in Ukraine. Those drones weren't symbolic, they were key to Russia's strategy, hitting Ukrainian cities and supply lines. Iran gave Russia a tactical edge, expecting real support in return: modern fighter jets, advanced air defenses, tech transfers, and a strategic shield against Israel and the West. The 20-year deal wasn't just about trade, it was about survival, promising defense cooperation and loyalty. Tehran thought Moscow would stand by them. But when Israel's Operation Rising Lion hammered Iran's military, Russia did nothing. No jets, no S-400s, no intel, just silence and excuses about logistics and bureaucracy. For Iran, it felt like betrayal. They'd backed Russia when few would, risking sanctions and isolation to fuel Moscow's war. Yet when their cities burned, Russia didn't even offer strong words. No emergency aid, no visible support, just delays and diplomatic fog. It wasn't just about weapons, it was about trust. Iran saw Russia as a true partner, maybe even a friend. But when missiles rained down, that friendship vanished, leaving Iran with a bitter truth: they gave much and got nothing. With no Russian help, Iran tried to hit back. Missiles and drones targeted Israeli cities, but most were intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome and David's Sling systems. A few got through, damaging buildings and injuring civilians, but the impact was minimal. Iranian state media pushed footage of successful hits, but the reality was grim. Behind the scenes, the government went into damage control, flooding airwaves with missile launches, drone footage, and patriotic rallies, vowing revenge. But the mood was dark. Questions spread: how did Israel know exactly where to strike? How did they bypass supposedly state-of-the-art systems? And why did Russia stay silent? The war was short, but its impact lingered. It was a wake-up call for Iran's military and foreign policy planners. The Russia alliance was supposed to bring protection and advanced weapons. Instead, Iran stood exposed, asking hard questions. Operation Rising Lion wasn't just a military strike, it was a mirror, reflecting Iran's shaky defenses, a failing partnership, and undeniable vulnerabilities. In their search for answers, Iran suspected traitors. Azerbaijan emerged as a prime suspect, given its long border with Iran, deep military ties with Israel, and past accusations of hosting Israeli surveillance. Hardliners and IRGC-linked media pushed the narrative, claiming Baku betrayed Tehran by aiding Israel's intelligence. But Iran's Supreme National Security Council stepped in. Ali Larijani, a top official, publicly dismissed the rumors, saying no evidence linked Azerbaijan to the strikes. He noted Baku's neutral stance and intact diplomatic ties. This wasn't just a denial, it was a strategic move to avoid chasing shadows and focus on real threats. It preserved stability with Azerbaijan, especially after 50-plus cooperation agreements. Other theories, like Kurdish networks or Western intelligence, lingered, but with Azerbaijan cleared, the focus shifted to bigger players and deeper breaches. Then Mohammad Sadr dropped a bombshell. He claimed Russia gave Israel the coordinates of Iran's air defense sites, handing them the blueprint to cripple Iran's response. This wasn't vague, it was a direct accusation. Russia betrayed Iran. Coming from a senior member of Iran's Expediency Discernment Council, with deep ties to the supreme leader, Sadr's words carried weight. He went further, tying Israel to the alleged assassination of former President Ebrahim Raisi in a May helicopter crash, framing it as part of Israel's long campaign to weaken Iran, from targeting leaders to hitting military sites. The timing was explosive, with Iran reeling from the war's cost, years of military investment reduced to rubble, strategic assets crippled, and a vulnerability deeper than any missile strike. Sadr's accusation tapped into long-standing doubts about Russia. Israel had struck Iranian targets in Syria for years, often near Russian radars, with no Russian response. Iranian commanders noticed, strategists whispered, but now, with Israel hitting inside Iran, whispers became accusations. Was Russia ever a true ally, or just a partner when it suited them? The claim hit Iran's political establishment like a missile. It pressured factions that championed the Russia alliance, who'd pushed for deeper military ties and long-term planning with Moscow. Their credibility was now on the line. The celebrated 20-year pact looked like a misstep, and Russia's silence during the war wasn't just frustrating, it was suspicious. Iranian media jumped on the story, social platforms exploded, and analysts, generals, and clerics weighed in. Was Russia ever on Iran's side? Had Tehran been played? The public, rattled by Israel's precise strikes, now wondered, did Russia enable it? Anger spread fast, people felt betrayed. The alliance was sold as a shield, but one of Iran's top voices called it sabotage from within. This sparked a quiet but urgent investigation. Post-war, Iranian intelligence reviewed their cyber infrastructure, focusing on military command and air defense systems. They found unsettling breaches in supposedly secure networks, with sophisticated cyber tools feeding real-time data to outsiders, possibly guiding Israel's strikes. Internal reports hinted some targeting data came from within Iran's systems, raising a chilling possibility: someone was watching from the inside. Suspicions about Russia deepened. Moscow had long supplied Iran's military software, including radar and satellite systems. If those had hidden backdoors or weak data channels, leaks were possible. Whether deliberate sabotage or sloppy engineering, the implications were stark. Iran's critical defenses relied on foreign tech that may have betrayed them. This exposed a strategic weakness Tehran can't ignore. They began reassessing their digital infrastructure, pushing for cyber independence. The war's digital aftershocks are reshaping Iran's defense doctrine for years to come. Iran's foreign ministry quickly pushed back on Sadr's claims, stating they were his personal views as a retired diplomat, not Tehran's official stance. They stressed his words didn't shape policy toward Moscow. The response aimed to contain the fallout, but social media erupted with debates and memes questioning the alliance's strength. Even the show where Sadr spoke issued a disclaimer, saying his views weren't endorsed, fueling more chatter about cracks in the system. One voice had forced a reckoning. So, why would Moscow betray Iran? Russia's silence wasn't random, it was calculated, driven by complex interests. First, its quiet ties with Israel. In Syria, Russia maintains key bases like Mimim and Tartus, vital for Mediterranean power projection. To keep them secure, Moscow and Tel Aviv have a deconfliction mechanism, letting Israel hit Iranian targets without Russian retaliation. It's not friendship, it's pragmatism. Russia tolerates Israel's strikes as long as its own assets are safe. Then there's Ukraine. Russia's military is stretched thin, bleeding resources in a grinding war. Opening a Middle East front would be disastrous. Supplying Iran with advanced weapons or clashing with Israel risks escalation Moscow can't afford. Every missile sent to Tehran is one less for Donbass. Economics also matters. Middle East tensions spike oil prices, boosting Russia's sanctioned economy. After Israel's strikes, crude prices surged, funneling cash to Moscow. Iran's pain became Russia's gain. Israel is also a strategic asset. Russia-Israel trade spans billions, from agriculture to cybersecurity. Moscow won't risk that for Tehran. Iran's useful, supplying drones, distracting the West, but it's not indispensable. Russia sees Iran as a pawn, not a partner. For over a decade, Russia's Middle East strategy has been about positioning, not loyalty. It backs Assad with Iran but coordinates with Israel. It sells weapons to Turkey while countering US-backed Kurds. Russia stays at the board's center, keeping players in orbit. Iran was tolerable when it brought results, but now it's just another piece, expendable. Intelligence reports reveal mutual espionage, with both sides spying to protect their agendas. Russia invested $2.7 billion in Iran by 2024, pledging $8 billion more for oil and gas. This was meant to cement ties, but it shows Russia sees Iran as a market to control, not an equal. When war came, those investments didn't translate to aid, just highlighted the one-sided dynamic. Iran's rivals, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Turkey, noticed. Iran's image as a defiant power took a hit. Regional intelligence is reassessing Iran's weakened posture. Iran's allied militias, Hezbollah, Houthis, PMF, are also questioning Tehran's strength. Some commanders are seeking other funding or limiting exposure, wary of retaliation Iran can't shield them from. Gulf states see a window to pressure a distracted Iran. Even Saudi Arabia's recent diplomacy may cool if Iran seems less threatening. The Russia-Iran pact avoided hard defense guarantees, giving Moscow wiggle room. It promised cooperation but not automatic military aid. Tehran misread the fine print, assuming a safety net that wasn't there. The war exposed this. Iran's air defenses were shredded, revealing gaps that'll take years and billions to fix. Tehran debuted a new system, claiming it rivaled Russia's, but it fell short. Public drills projected strength, but the economy, strained by sanctions and inflation, can't keep up. The Russia partnership was meant to ease that burden. Trade grew, drones were built, but when it mattered, it offered no protection. What's next? Iran could pivot to China or scale back with Russia, but the relationship will likely just grow colder. Trade may continue, but trust is gone. China's no savior either. Its deals with Iran are cautious, prioritizing Gulf states and Israel. Beijing stayed neutral during the war, offering no support. Iran's dream of an Eastern Bloc crumbled. Saud's word, scam, captures the mood. Russia helped when convenient, then vanished. Trust is broken, and the fracture shifts everything. Historically, Iran and Russia were never friends, just partners out of necessity, bound by sanctions and enemies, not trust. Iran brought geography and irregular warfare, Russia brought hardware and global clout. Every deal had caveats, every handshake doubt. The June War exposed this fragile arrangement's limits. Iran faces a stark choice: keep playing a rigged game or pivot entirely, east or inward. The alliance isn't dead, but the illusion is. What's next won't be about trust, it'll be about survival. This was never a brotherhood. It was a deal. And the deal is breaking.